The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor, spraying expensive liquid across Jolene's bare feet. "Pack your bags and get out of my house." 37 guests went silent. The chandelier above, the one Jolene's grandmother bought in 1987, cast shadows across Bridger's twisted face as he grabbed her by the arm and shoved her toward the door of the million-dollar mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut. His mistress, Fallon, laughed from the leather couch. His mother, Ardith, nodded in approval. His brother, Talmadge, smirked. But here's the thing nobody saw coming. Jolene smiled. Not a sad smile. Not a nervous smile. A smile that could freeze hell itself. "Bridger," she said quietly, pulling a folded document from her dress pocket, "we need to talk about whose house this actually is." What happened next changed everything. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Because this story takes a turn you will not see coming. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever had someone underestimate you? Let's get into it. Jolene Macy wasn't always quiet. She used to laugh loud. Used to paint murals on weekends. Used to have friends who called her fearless. That was before Bridger Colt walked into her life 8 years ago at a charity dinner in Darien, Connecticut, told her she was beautiful and promised her the world. He was handsome. Confident. Worked in finance, or at least that's what he told everyone. He drove a leased BMW, wore expensive suits his credit cards paid for, and spoke like someone who'd built empires. Jolene fell for it. They married within a year. She thought she'd found safety, partnership, love. She found a prison instead. The house sat on 2 acres in Greenwich, white columns, black shutters, a fountain in the circular driveway. It looked like something from a movie. Bridger loved telling people it was his. "Yeah, closed on this beauty 3 years ago," he'd say at dinner parties, waving his whiskey glass. "Best investment I ever made." Jolene would stand beside him, smiling politely, saying nothing. She learned early that correcting Bridger ended badly. The first time she tried, he'd waited until everyone left, then cornered her in the kitchen. "You trying to embarrass me?" he hissed, backing her against the counter. "You think you're smarter than me." She never corrected him again. By year 3 of marriage, Jolene had stopped painting. Stopped calling friends. Stopped recognizing herself in mirrors. Bridger controlled everything, the money, the car keys, even her phone sometimes. He'd check her texts, question every trip to the grocery store, mock her clothes. "You're gonna wear that," he'd say, looking at her like she was dirt. "No wonder nobody takes you seriously." His mother, Ardith, was worse. She visited every Sunday, walking through the house like she owned it, criticizing everything Jolene did. "This roast is dry. The baseboards have dust. Bridger deserves better than this." Jolene would nod, apologize, and retreat to the kitchen. She became invisible in her own home. But here's the question nobody thought to ask. Why did Jolene stay? People always assume women like her are weak. Trapped. Helpless. Sometimes they are. But sometimes, they're playing a longer game. Fallon Stiers entered the picture 2 years ago. Bridger didn't even hide it well. Late nights. Perfume on his collar. Lipstick shades Jolene didn't own. When she finally asked him about it, he laughed. "What are you gonna do, Jolene? Leave?" He leaned close, his breath reeking of bourbon. "You got no money. No job. No options. This is my house. You're here because I let you be here." He said it like a fact. Like gravity. Jolene said nothing. She just walked upstairs, locked herself in the bathroom, and cried until her ribs hurt. But after the tears stopped, she made a phone call. The lawyer's name was Pemberton Ashford. He worked out of a small office in Stamford, handled estates and property law, and had known Jolene's family for decades. "Jolene," Pemberton said when she arrived, worry etched in his weathered face. "What's going on?" She told him everything. The control. The insults. The mistress. Pemberton listened, his jaw tightening. "And the house?" he asked carefully. Jolene nodded. "He thinks it's his." Pemberton leaned back in his chair. Does he know your grandmother left it to you in the trust? That the deed transferred to your name 2 months before you got married? No, Jolene whispered. I never told him. Pemberton smiled, not kindly, but with the sharp edge of someone who'd just been handed a winning hand. Then let's keep it that way, he said. For now. The next 18 months were the hardest of Jolene's life. Bridger got bolder, meaner. He started bringing Fallon to the house Jolene legally owned, and treating her like the lady of the manor. Fallon would sit on the couch, feet up on the coffee table, ordering Jolene to bring drinks. Be a dear and grab me some wine, she'd say, not even looking at her. Jolene would do it. She'd smile. She'd serve. And inside, she'd count down the days. Bridger's brother, Talmadge, moved into the guest house 6 months ago. Just until he gets back on his feet, Bridger said, not asking Jolene's permission. Talmadge was worse than Bridger, louder, cruder, lazier. He'd eat Jolene's cooking, leave dishes everywhere, and make jokes about her body at dinner. Jolene's got that mom bod going on, he'd say, laughing. Bridger would laugh too. Ardith would shake her head like Jolene was an embarrassment. And Jolene. She'd clear the plates in silence. But here's what none of them saw. Jolene was documenting everything. Photos of Fallon's car in the driveway. Recordings of Bridger's threats. Bank statements showing where his money actually went, mostly to bars, gambling sites, and Fallon's shopping sprees. She met with Pemberton once a month, always during the day when Bridger thought she was grocery shopping. Are you ready? Pemberton asked at their last meeting. Jolene stared out the window at the grey Connecticut sky. Not yet, she said quietly. But soon. The party was Bridger's idea. We're throwing a bash, he announced one morning. 40 people. Catered. Open bar. I want everyone to see what success looks like. He meant his success. His house. His wealth. His life. Jolene said nothing. She just nodded and started planning. The night of the party, the house glowed like a jewel. String lights wrapped the trees. A jazz band played near the pool. Waiters in bow ties served appetizers. Jolene wore a simple navy dress, nothing flashy, nothing that would draw attention. Bridger wore a custom suit and had Fallon on his arm like a trophy. Guests filled the house, colleagues, neighbors, people Bridger barely knew but wanted to impress. He worked the room like a politician, shaking hands, telling stories, pointing out features of his mansion. Jolene stayed near the kitchen, refilling glasses, smiling when spoken to. Invisible. It happened at 9:47 p.m. Bridger was drunk, not sloppy, but loose. Confident. He stood in the center of the living room, glass raised, demanding everyone's attention. I want to make a toast, he slurred, grinning. To this beautiful house, my house, and to the life I built. Everyone clapped. Fallon kissed his cheek. Ardith beamed with pride. And then Bridger looked at Jolene. And to my wife, he said, voice dripping with mock affection. Who's been, well, she's been here. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Jolene felt her face burn. Bridger wasn't done. But let's be real, Jolene doesn't do much. Doesn't work. Doesn't contribute. Just exists. In my house. More laughter. Talmadge whistled. Fallon smirked. And Jolene. Jolene reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Bridger, she said, her voice cutting through the noise like glass. Can I say something? He turned, surprised. She rarely spoke at these things. Sure, babe, he said, chuckling nervously. Jolene stepped forward, the paper in her hand. You've talked a lot tonight about your house, she said calmly. About the life you built. About how you provide. Bridger's smile faltered. And I've let you say those things for a long time, Jolene continued, her voice steady. Because I wanted to see how far you'd go. The room went quiet. What are you talking about? Bridger asked, irritation creeping into his voice. Jolene unfolded the paper. This, she said, holding it up, is the deed to this house. Silence. The house my grandmother left me in 2014. The house that was transferred into my name, My name only, 2 months before we got married. Bridger's face went pale. You've been living in my house, Bridger. Bragging about my property. Humiliating me in my home. Gasps spread through the crowd. Fallon's mouth fell open. Ardith looked like she'd been slapped. Talmadge stopped mid-drink. And Bridger just stood there, frozen. Jolene stood in the center of her living room, surrounded by 37 stunned guests, holding the deed to the house her husband had been pretending to own for 8 years. Bridger's face had gone from smug to ghost white in seconds. His mistress, Fallon, looked ready to bolt. His mother, Ardith, clutched her pearls like they might save her. And Jolene wasn't done talking. Let me make this clear, Jolene said, her voice calm but sharp enough to cut steel. Every piece of furniture in this house. Mine. The cars in the driveway. Bought with money from my trust. The renovations Bridger loves to brag about. Paid for by me. She turned to face him directly. You've been living rent-free in my house, Bridger. You've been a guest. And you've been a terrible one. Bridger's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. That's, he started, but his voice cracked. That's not, Jolene, you're confused. I'm not confused, Jolene said, cutting him off. She held up her phone. I have emails. Contracts. Bank statements. Every single transaction that proves this house is mine. She looked around the room at the frozen faces. I also have recordings, she added quietly, of the things Bridger says to me when nobody's listening. The threats. The insults. The times he told me I was worthless. A woman near the fireplace gasped. Bridger's face turned red. You recorded me. That's illegal. Actually, said a new voice from the doorway. In Connecticut, only one party needs to consent to a recording. And since Jolene was part of those conversations, everything she recorded is perfectly legal. Everyone turned. Pemberton Ashford stepped into the room, briefcase in hand, looking like he'd just walked out of a courtroom victory. Good evening, he said pleasantly. I'm Mrs. Mace's attorney. You could have heard a pin drop. Bridger looked between Jolene and Pemberton, panic flooding his eyes. This is insane, he said, voice rising. You can't just, this is my house. I've been paying the bills. With money I transferred into our joint account, Jolene said. Money from my trust. The mortgage. There is no mortgage, Bridger. The house was paid off when my grandmother died. He stumbled back a step. Pemberton opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. Mr. Colt, he said calmly, you have no legal claim to this property. You're not on the deed. You're not on the title. You have no ownership stake whatsoever. He set the papers on the coffee table. These are eviction papers. Mrs. Macy is formally asking you to vacate the premises within 72 hours. Chaos exploded. Fallon jumped up from the couch. Wait, what about me? Jolene turned to her slowly. You were never even supposed to be here. You can leave tonight. But. Tonight, Jolene repeated, ice in her voice. Fallon looked at Bridger, waiting for him to defend her. He said nothing. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, heels clicking furiously against the hardwood. Ardith finally found her voice. This is outrageous, she screeched, pointing a bony finger at Jolene. You can't throw my son out of his own home. Jolene faced her. For 8 years, she'd swallowed every insult this woman threw at her. Every backhanded comment. Every look of disgust. Not anymore. Ardith, Jolene said, voice steady. This has never been his home. And you're not welcome here anymore either. Ardith's face turned purple. How dare you? I dare, Jolene said, because it's my house. And you've treated me like dirt in it for the last time. She turned to Talmadge, who was inching toward the door. You too, she said. Out of the guest house by tomorrow. Come on, Jolene, he started. It's Mrs. Macy, she corrected. And I'm done talking. The guests began to leave. Some whispered apologies to Jolene. Others avoided eye contact entirely. A few women gave her small, knowing smiles, the kind shared between people who understood what it was like to be underestimated. Within 20 minutes, the house was empty except for Jolene, Pemberton, and Bridger. Bridger slumped on the couch, head in his hands. "Jolene," he said quietly, "please. Let's talk about this." "We're done talking," she said. "I made mistakes, okay? I know I did. But you can't just..." His voice broke. "Where am I supposed to go?" Jolene looked at him, really looked at him. She didn't feel anger anymore. She didn't even feel satisfaction. She felt nothing. "I don't know, Bridger," she said. "But that's not my problem anymore." 3 days later, Bridger was gone. He packed 2 suitcases, took his car, which, it turned out, was leased under Jolene's credit, and left without saying goodbye. Fallon had already moved on, literally. She was spotted 2 towns over with another man, someone who actually had money. Talmadge went back to their mother's apartment in Bridgeport. Ardith called Jolene once, leaving a venomous voicemail about how ungrateful and cruel she was. Jolene deleted it without listening to the whole thing. The house felt different after they left. Bigger. Quieter. Hers. Jolene walked through the room slowly, touching the walls, the furniture, the little things she'd chosen years ago but had stopped noticing. She opened windows and let fresh air sweep through. She threw out Bridger's things, the cologne he wore, the stupid golf trophies, the whiskey glasses he loved. She burned the sheets from their bed and bought new ones. And then, on a Saturday morning 3 weeks after the party, Jolene did something she hadn't done in 8 years. She painted. She set up an easel in the sunroom, the one with windows overlooking the garden. Her hand shook when she picked up the brush. She wasn't sure if she even remembered how. But the moment the paint touched the canvas, something inside her cracked open. Colors bled across the white surface, blues and golds and deep greens. She painted for hours, losing herself in the movements, the textures, the quiet hum of creativity she'd buried so long ago. When she finally stepped back, the painting wasn't perfect. But it was hers. And that was enough. But here's the thing nobody tells you about standing up for yourself. The world doesn't suddenly become easy. People still judge you. Some people, mutual friends, distant relatives, took Bridger's side. She humiliated him, they whispered. In front of everyone. That's cruel. Others said she should have handled it privately. A few even suggested she was too harsh. Jolene didn't care. For the first time in years, she wasn't living for other people's approval. She was living for herself. Pemberton helped her tie up the legal loose ends. Bridger tried to fight the eviction at first, hired a cheap lawyer who argued he had some kind of common law claim to the property. The judge laughed him out of court. Jolene also discovered Bridger had opened credit cards in her name without telling her, racking up almost $40,000 in debt. Pemberton handled that too, filing fraud claims and getting every cent erased from her record. "You're free," Pemberton told her one afternoon over coffee. "Legally, financially, completely." Jolene smiled. Free. She liked the sound of that. 6 months later, Jolene sold the house. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. The place held too many ghosts, too many memories of being small, silent, swallowed up. She bought a smaller place in Westport, right on the water. A cottage with big windows and a studio space for painting. She started teaching art classes at the community center. She reconnected with old friends, people she'd lost touch with during the marriage. She laughed again. Really laughed. The kind of laughter that comes from deep in your belly and makes your cheeks hurt. One evening, she ran into Bridger. It was at a coffee shop in Norwalk. She was picking up a latte, and he was sitting in the corner, looking small. He'd lost weight. His clothes didn't fit right. He looked tired. Their eyes met. For a second, Jolene thought he might say something. Maybe apologize. Maybe beg. But he just looked away, ashamed. And Jolene. She took her coffee and walked out without a word. Because some people don't deserve your closure. Here's what Jolene learned. You can be kind for years. You can be patient. You can sacrifice and bend and shrink yourself to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. But there comes a moment, sometimes quiet, sometimes loud, where you have to choose yourself. And when you do, everything changes. People love to underestimate quiet women. They mistake silence for weakness, patience for stupidity, kindness for doormat behavior. But here's the truth. Quiet doesn't mean powerless. And patience doesn't mean you've forgotten. Sometimes, the quietest people are just waiting for the right moment to remind the world exactly who they are. Jolene did that. And she did it in a way nobody saw coming. Now it's your turn. Have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever had someone treat you like you didn't matter, only to prove them wrong later? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear it. And if this story hit you the way it hit me, smash that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe because we've got more stories like this coming your way. Remember, you are not defined by how people treat you. You are defined by how you rise after they try to break you. Stay strong. Stay smart. And never let anyone make you feel small in your own home. END